Okay guys, you are the only people I would do this for, but I have gone out and hunted down the latest episode of Loose Women where they go and talk about homeschooling again. Let's get into this together and see if their views have changed over the years. I'm sorry if my lighting is rubbish at the moment, but it is 4 o'clock on a Sunday in the UK, so it is, you know, almost night time. My husband is out with the kids. I'm just drinking some wine and watching some YouTube videos. Living my best life. Okay, let's go.
For all of that, a former teacher said she'd never send her 3 kids to mainstream school because she thinks traditional methods like classes and homework kills kids' spirits.
Do you know what? This literally last Wednesday, I met a new mum at one of our home ed meetups who was also a former primary school teacher who is now home educating her child. She had like a, I think, 6-year-old and then maybe a 1.5-year-old, I think it was. So. And we already had another home ed mum that I know who used to be a school teacher. It is quite interesting the amount of teachers that do make that transition.
She prefers them to spend their time taking risks and doing things like climbing trees, running barefoot or playing in the mud, and has also taught them things like how to butcher their own meat. Seems a bit extreme, but okay. So we're asking...
I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so I probably won't be doing that with my kids, but I did actually recently see advertised a biltong making session for home ed kids, so that does actually happen. Excuse me.
Another question, are traditional schooling methods fit for purpose? Now, we've both got school-age kids, haven't we, Franks? What do you think?
I think this one's a bit hard for me, I think, because it's quite relevant for me at the moment. So my youngest is dyslexic. So he was youngest in the year, so he's already repeated reception. And then now
Repeated reception? I've not actually heard of that before. I know like summer-born kids can defer until the next year and they usually go in at year 1, or in certain cases they start a reception, but I've not actually heard of repeating reception before, but sounds good.
he's still really struggling, and the school, luckily, the teachers are amazing, you know, and that's like my biggest thing here is teachers have a really tough job in general.
We've got to always add that caveat, haven't we, that most teachers are amazing, we love them, not criticising before you come at us.
So this is by no means a dig on teachers, but for some reason the headmaster at his school won't really acknowledge dyslexia or give him the help that he needs. So for me, I'm now in this horrible stage of Carter struggling at school.
I mean, that's like awful if his head teacher isn't acknowledging that he might have dyslexia and isn't giving the help he needed. I thought we were pretty like up on that these days, but you know, we got to believe what she's saying about her own child. That's really bad.
Being upset all the time, being aware that he's behind, and having to try and keep up to the one level that all kids are made to kind of keep up with. And I think it's such a shame because there's lots of really successful dyslexic people in the world, and they just have a different way of learning, and for them not to be able to understand that or to be able to meet his needs is really frustrating as a parent, because luckily for us, financially, we can think, do we need to homeschool him? Do we need to put him into a different school? But there's a lot of parents that don't have that option.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of surprised with what she's saying. Like, I thought people were quite hot on that sort of thing today in this day and age, and understanding, like she said, absolutely, like dyslexia doesn't have to be something that holds people back these days. So the fact that her son is in 2023 is like pretty telling, I think. Yeah, let's see what she goes on to say.
And I do think a lot of what they are made to learn and the way they are taught is maybe a bit old school now. I think it needs to catch up with the life and the world we live in.
Well, do you think it's I think if you sort of speak to dyslexic adults and they talk about their school experience, they tend to look at it in quite a negative way because they weren't given the support that they needed at that particular moment in time. So it's a case of it not necessarily being outdated, but just not able to, school and work for perhaps the majority of kids who struggle within the school system.
I think it's I think we know more now, so I feel like it's less of an excuse now. Like back in the day, my dad has always said loads of his friends were dyslexic, but they were just told they were naughty or they were stupid, so they were thrown out of school and stuff. But we know more now. There's not really an excuse. And I think some of those kids need to be taught in different ways so they're not bored, so they're not causing trouble, or they're not feeling anxious and they want to go into school still. But for me, I don't want to homeschool my child. But it is something. Why don't you want to? Because I want him. It's weird. I feel mixed because part of me is like, am I not wanting to homeschool him because society says that he'll be a strange child and he'll miss out on socialising, even though I would make sure he still socialises. Because
I wonder how many people that is actually a factor for, who genuinely don't homeschool their kids, even though they might want to, because of how they feel society will view their children, because I think there is probably still that stigma sometimes that, homeschool kids are weird. Like, I've met quite a lot of homeschool kids now, home-educated children. I've genuinely not met one that I've thought, they're a bit weird. Like, they all are pretty normal kids, if any of us are actually normal.
Because that's not the norm, or is it because I still genuinely think school life is important for him? Don't get me wrong, I've got one child who it fully suits, and I wouldn't move him at all because he's doing well and he's happy, but it's not one size fits all, and I think that's the problem with the system, is that they forget that not everyone is the same. If he goes and gets a job tomorrow, all workplaces are fully equipped to deal with people with different needs, so why aren't the schools?
And this is an argument that people come up with so often, is like, school has to prepare children for the working world. And like, I spent my fair amount of time in the working world, and it never in the slightest resembled school. And I don't get where people get this from. And like she was saying, a lot of workplaces now are super kind of hot on making sure that everyone is accommodated for, and yet schools can't keep up with that. But somehow schools are supposed to equip our children for the working world. Like, that's one that's just never made sense to me.
Same regarding homeschooling. You're not a fan, are you?
I'm not a fan of homeschooling, but I also realised that as a result of COVID, truancy is higher than ever, and parents are not pushing their children back into school for whatever reason. And I think that is a big issue. And I'm not sure that homeschooling your child instead of sending them to school is ultimately going to benefit your child. Yes, there are things wrong with our education system, but at the end of the day, deciding to teach your child how to make yogurt and try to climb a tree is not necessarily going to get them a job that they'll want at 18 or 19 when they...
So, first issue with this is there's always this assumption, and I think this is true in a lot of cases, that people home educate because school hasn't worked out for them, and it's like the backup plan, it's the fail-safe, it's when people have no other option. And I know that is true for a lot of people, but for example, for us, we're not home educating because school didn't work for us. Home education is our first choice. My children have never been to school, and there's part of me that thinks actually they wouldn't do that well in a school environment, and you know my views on school if you have watched any of my other videos. But we don't choose to home educate because school has not worked out for our children. We choose because we think that is the best form of education. And I think a lot of people don't realise that that is actually some people's reality. The yogurt making thing. I mean, she's obviously just very uninformed about home education, and that's fine. We know when we make yogurt with the kids, which I've never actually done, it's not just about making yogurt. Some of it is, but a lot of it is about reading instructions, and it's about quantities, number recognition, maths. Like, there's so much more than just making yogurt, as she puts it.
Leave school. The hard fact is that going to school and going to a state school, in my opinion, preferably, is good for teaching you how to get on with people you might not otherwise get on with, how to fit in and how to experience discipline, and also how to experience boredom, because all your jobs are boring to a certain degree. So
I'd love to know if her job is boring. I think we as home educators in the home ed community like probably experience boredom a lot differently to what she's talking about. Like, she's kind of talking like you have to be able to be bored because everything in life is boring and you just got to like slog through it. Whereas I think we probably view boredom as like this really amazing creative opportunity where kids seem to come up with the most kind of inspired learning. And we, like, personally, and probably for a lot of home educators, we try to allow spaces in our day for boredom to occur, because we know that that's when sometimes the best learning opportunities actually happen, and it's not just something to be endured, as the way she's putting it. As for her other comments, I can't even think right now. Let me know in the comments if you can come up with any reply to what she said then about discipline and having to get along with people that you wouldn't usually get along with.
So what has happened, it seems to me, is parents seem to want to take over from teachers. Parents think they know better. It's all about parents, and they feel that they know what's best for their kid.
I think sometimes we do, though.
I'm sure that sometimes you do, but
I wouldn't know how to teach him better, but I think you know what's best for your
I think,
child.
My partner was a teacher for many years, and one of my close friends has gone back into teaching at 50, and she finds now the level of violence in the classroom, the disrespect, the lack of manners from teenage boys in particular is really, really challenging. So you have to throw all that back at the parents and say, surely you must play some part in it.
I mean, she makes a great advert for school, doesn't she? She's telling us like we should all be pushing our kids back to school, and yet the behaviour in classrooms is absolutely terrible at the moment. Like, she's kind of contradicting herself. I don't think she's making the best advert for school there, or like that school is doing the best for children if that's what is happening in classrooms. It's not really selling it to me.
I see you nodding away there, Tom.
I definitely wouldn't homeschool.
Okay.
I just can't stand my kids. I wouldn't be doing it myself.
Haha, let's all laugh at how she can't stand her kids. I mean, that's, I think I've sort of talked about that before, how it's become normalised. Oh, incoming. Hey, babe. What's up, darling? Oh, you got an apple?
I'm gonna eat it.
You're gonna eat it? Yeah. Okay. See you downstairs then. It's sort of become normalised to like say that you don't really like your kids. Do you think I like you, babe?
Were you talking to them?
No, I'm not talking to them, I'm talking to you. I like spending time with you, babe.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? But what did you do when you were out with Daddy?
We did go to IKEA, got new what?
Oh, you got new thermals?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, you tried to.
No, homeschooling, no, not for me. It's really hard because I don't want to feel like that old fuddy-duddy. Because
but you're going to give it a go.
I'm going to give it a go. Because I was very much, much more involved with my kids when they were at school than my parents were with me. So if I came home from school and said, well, I was bullied for 2 years in school, and then, the teacher told me off today, or I got detention today, they'd go, well, you must deserve it, and walk off. That was it. The bullying, sort it out, walked off.
obviously then when I had my kids, oh Mum, this happened, and I'd go, well, why did this happen? Well, I need to have a word with your teacher because I'm not sure I agree with that. And I think...
See, I think that's really good. Like, I think we should be getting a bit more involved if our kids are in school.
Who are you talking to?
And, you know, I respect her for that if she was kind of saying to the teachers, I'm not sure I agree with that, because a lot of people do just, you know, leave it all up to the school, or are maybe afraid to question the school because they can be led to believe that it's somehow their fault. And I'll be interested to see where she's going with this, but I think that's good that she was doing that.
We have become a bit too involved, and let them do their job and we should do ours at home. You know what I mean? So it's I'm kind of on the fence of both.
I mean, parenting is not easy at all. I think with a lot of parents really struggle to get their
is so
kids
hard
to go
now.
into school, and that alone can be very, very difficult. You can't physically drag them. You can't do that. So I know it's difficult on both sides for parents and for teachers. But as you said, Frankie, there must be another way in the system. There must be another way.
There we go. I mean, I think it was kind of better than the one from, like, what was it, 7 years ago, in that there's slightly less home ed cliches. You know, there obviously still is this misconception or misrepresentation of home ed kids being a bit of weird and only coming out of school because they've refused to go to school and they've had a lot of trouble there, which isn't true. And obviously, what's her name, Janet Street Porter is kind of maybe a bit old school in some of her views. Like, maybe she did make some good points. Like, I couldn't really think of anything on the moment. Anyway, as always, let me know in the comments what you thought and we can discuss everything. I'm sorry if you sat through that and it made you angry and really annoyed you. Maybe go on and watch this video and feel a bit better about things.